all, Josh here, and this is my review of John Woo's Red Cliff, Part 1. And if you don't know, which you may very well not, this movie is part of a two-part Chinese production, which is the most expensive Asian production ever made, at equivalent to about $80 million US. Very Hollywood-threatening, if you ask me, and frankly, Hollywood-threatening in many other lights, too. And like I said, you may not know about this movie. It was released here in North America under a cut form, which is about 2.5 hours, whereas the full form is 2 parts, and both of those equal 2.5 hours, so they literally cut out an entire half of the production, which I thought was kind of, not heresy per se, but really unnecessary, considering that we are used to longer movies. But I understand that it generally, this type of production doesn't sell to the amount of money that it would need to make its money back in this audience. People just don't have the patience for movies like this anymore, which is sad, or at least in North America, I mean, they don't have patience, which is sad because, honestly, this is a really fantastic movie. Even outside of the production values, which are amazing, definitely the money stretches far more than you would think $80 million would in a Hollywood movie. Everything about this movie really impressed me. The story, the characters, especially the soundtrack was equally very good. But again, I'll get to those in a little bit. Start off with the story. If you don't know, this movie is based off, again, the much lauded Romance of the Three Kingdoms era of China, a very covered territory. If you play a lot of video games, it's the premises for Kessin and especially the long-running Dynasty Warriors series. Obviously, those are much stylized, and frankly, this movie is too, no, not to nearly the same ridiculous extent. But overall, I think the story does a really great job, even though you pretty much know who's going to win, even if you're not familiar with the historical account, mostly like myself. But I think it really does a great job with suspense. This movie does have huge, epic battle scenes, and they are amazing in their strategy, in their execution, and just in general, trying to think of the actual production of these scenes is quite amazing. Literally a cast of thousands, like I said, and it really shows through that there was real live people, not just CG, and I think there's definitely something to be said by that. Anyway, again, I'll get to that later. I'm getting off track again. The story is basically about Prime Minister Cao Cao trying to usurp the Southerners, particularly Liu Bei, and the state of Wu. And that's the entire movie. The entire movie is based on all the subplots, or the 2 movies of Red Cliff, that is, are based off the subplots among all the many characters, along with the war, the politics, the romance, the intrigue, and that's what makes that movie so good in my opinion. This makes this movie so good in my opinion. I really hope Part 2 can live up to Part 1, because Part 1 provides some really nice characterizations. Even though there are many characters in this movie, I thought they handled them all quite decently, and though all of them do not get really in-depth into their psyche and whatnot, honestly, in this type of movie, you don't expect that. To get even more than a basic outline is amazing, and this movie does accomplish that. It gives people layers that you can look into and interpret. Particularly, these layers are obviously taken into account earlier in the movie before you know them, and I think it would be interesting to rewatch the movie because of this. Overall, it has a really nice pace, and like I said, it tends to build tension through the non-war scenes, and while the war scenes are amazing, I actually prefer the tension-building scenes, if only because they are so good at times. Anything from a political allies being won through a musical contest, which comes up really out of nowhere but is incredibly tense, along with the strategic maneuvering of pre-battle sequences. Even simple conversations with people can take on a very political tone, and while that does sound maybe a little boring in the context of the movie, it makes it work. Overall, story, really loved it. Some great subplots, particularly Sun Quan and his hunting trip to regain his courage to lead his kingdom, and even a lot of the main characters I think really did a good job with their plot lines, even their subplots, I mean. Takeshi Kaneshiro as Zhu Liang, his romance, I thought was really nice. In general, he's a fantastically charismatic actor, as well as Tony Leung Choi as Zhu Yu did a really good job. And like I said, you'll recognize in the game, if you played them again, a lot of these smaller characters, smaller as in anything small can be in this type of production, like Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, and they really do fulfill their roles, but they are much more, for lack of a better word, simple characters than these other people. And I think it was right to focus on these people, particularly Guan Zhongluo's novel. probably focus on them quite a bit more, but when even trying to pare such a massive beast down to a 5-hour production, I think they made the wise choice. Last but certainly not least is Wei Zhao as Sun Shangjiang, and though I normally dislike this type of character, and while at the same time I think this is perhaps not historically accurate at all, it does provide some nice comedic relief. And that's actually one thing I did want to touch on before I get out of the main portion of this review, is saying that this movie had some really weird, out-of-place comedic relief. And I don't mean out of place in a bad way, that's probably an improper word choice. I mean out of place in it was very unexpected, I guess is the right word. And I thought that was kind of interesting. It sees the movie takes itself so seriously. These small segments, only a couple seconds long, really help not necessarily alleviate the mood, but help keep you entranced in this very serious spectacle. I think that's going to help along a lot of viewers. It certainly did myself, though I didn't need any help grabbing my attention, because now I'm going to get into the effects and the sound, and I have nothing but laudatory phrases to use, and hyperbole, really, because, frankly, the $80 million stretches itself fantastically. There are a lot of really great visual effects in this movie. Nothing is skimped on, don't get me wrong, but I did really want to make special note of the costuming and the sets, because, oh my god, there has not been a spectacle like this in a long time. That you can maintain such immense variety and immense quality for a 5-hour production is amazing. And again, I've only seen 2.5 hours, so unless it drops off dramatically during the second part, which I highly doubt, this will remain for the second part. I am going to do a review of the second part. But for now, yeah, definitely just amazing production qualities. And really, I was really impressed with how well they handled some of these things. There are some really flashy segments in this movie, and while some of it definitely does tend to linger a little long to show how expensive and amazing this production looks, most of it is actually handled really subtly and just lets you take in the details without focusing on them. Lastly, I want to get to the score of this movie, and I really think that the score does a good job. It repeats the main theme a lot, but it does what a lot of movies do for a good score, is kind of alters the main theme to fit situations when appropriate. I really like it when they do that. I dislike when scores use constantly new themes. It really gets to me. I know this is a very small thing, but in a production like this, even the smallest thing can cripple you, and thankfully this movie does not fall prey to that. So in conclusion, if you like epic spectacles, if you like any kind of Chinese movies, then go see this. If you like war strategy movies, fantastic for this. There's some amazing things in here. There's some great acting, great visuals. You really can't go wrong unless you don't have the patience to sit through a really long production like this. And all of that's fair, honestly. I'm not going to try and call you out for that. It is definitely for a certain taste. You don't like Chinese history or epic battles or any kind of political intrigue like that, you're not going to like this movie. But if you do, definitely check it out if you have the slightest interest. Even just invest in part 1. There is a to-be-continued ending, but it is still an amazing movie in its own right, and you're still going to get a good experience, I think. I would bet my money on it, though I'm not going to. Anyway, go see Red Cliff, full endorsement, easily one of my favorite movies of 2008 now. I cannot wait to see part 2. I'm going to be watching it tomorrow. The review will probably go up either late tomorrow night or Monday, but expect it up soon, and expect greatness, I hope.